Hello, hello, everybody. Emma Howitt here, Pure Abodes. So, I thought today would be a great opportunity to talk about unlocking your short-term rental success by knowing your guest. So that is your guest type. And what I feel that some people miss out is your guest type actually shapes your business. It actually has so many things that fall into place when you know your guest avatar. So, so this is all about understanding who it is that's going to stay in your short-term rental. And another reason that I wanted to go into this is I am about to launch my book. And so I've been told I need to do some like marketing, I suppose. And so, one of the big chapters in this book is all about finding your avatar. And the book is all about, the title is How to Finally Nail Your Gold Mine Area. And it is just so key that we really understand our area. And in fact, when I do mentoring, that is one of the first things that I talk through to people is what is your area? And a lot of people have done some kind of top line work on that, but most of the time there hasn't been enough. And so I take people back to the basics, because what I always want is I always want to have a scenario where you've got so many bookings and not that many properties, because then it's going to be quite an easy business, isn't it? I want our businesses to be easy because there's enough challenges in business anyway. So we want to make our lives as easy as possible. And I have done, I have started businesses where it has just been such an uphill struggle that in the end, you just have to think, is this worth my time, effort, money, etc., etc. So that's where it's really important that we understand the need, the want, all of those things of your avatar and your gold mine area. So just to sort of jump into this up front, and what I'm doing basically is I'm kind of going through my chapter and talking it through. Why I think it's really great to get into the mindset of why would people choose a short-term rental rather than, say, a hotel. And I actually got this initially from Ahmed Khan. He's a really fantastic young chap, lives in London and absolutely smashed it. Never had a job, went straight from university to running his own business. So he did incredibly well. So what are the benefits? So he's listed out the following, which is space, being cost friendly, having home comforts, freedom, home cooking, obviously location is really key, familiarity, that's an interesting one, and housekeeping. So if we just quickly sort of nip through those. So obviously with a space, if you imagine most hotels, it's a square box, isn't it? And you literally just have a bed, maybe bedside tables. Some of them don't even have bedside tables. I don't know if anyone's stayed in hotel rooms where the plug is in the wrong place. Oh my gosh, I've literally moved beds in hotel rooms so that I could be charging up my phone, because my phone is also my my alarm clock, etc., etc. So they're these kind of really tight spaces, and especially if you've got more than one of you, there's usually only kind of one chair and the bed. So it is quite tight. So you can imagine if you're actually staying in a hotel room with somebody you don't know, then that, it's a tight thing. So cost friendly. So when you have a short-term rental unit or your serviced accommodation unit, obviously you can generally fit more people in, unless it's a studio flat, which is not that much different, but to a hotel. But you can usually fit more people in, and you'll have a price per night. And quite often, the more people that you fit into that property, the more reasonable the price is going to be for those people staying in there. So you're not necessarily, I mean, it would be lovely, wouldn't it? But let's say a hotel are charging you £100 a night, and you've got a 4-bed property that can sleep up to 8 people. You're not going to be charging them £800 a night. It would be nice if you could get it. So what you're going to do is obviously bring that price down, and then for the people staying, that's going to be an incredibly good price for them. So whether it's contractors or families, that can be real value for money. Then we come to home comforts. So, you know, can you do what you want when you want? So it might be, you know, you might want to live, sleep, do your laundry, have your smart TV, and you want to do it in your own comfort. You want to feel, especially if you're away for a long time. So imagine if you are like a nomad, you know, a digital nomad, that's called, that, you know, that people are called nowadays, but you want to go off and you want to live somewhere. You don't want to be feeling like you're living out of a suitcase. You want to arrive somewhere, unpack, feel really, be able to cook, be able to sleep, create your own routine. So it really is thinking about these properties. It has absolutely everything for them. Then I really like this one, and it's something that resonates massively with me, is you want to have it in your own time scale. So freedom. You can do what you want when you want, and you're not held by the fact that, you know, breakfast is at this time, or you've got to be in by this time. You know, if you want to have dinner, you can cook your own dinner, you can order takeout, you can do all of those things that you want to do. You don't have to, I know you can have breakfast in your room, but it's not quite the same, isn't it? So it's really all about sort of working, playing and relaxing in your own time scales. And also, you don't necessarily have to reserve, let's say, a conference room. Let's say you are traveling for business and you just want to have a meeting. You can have a meeting in the living room, in the dining room, where, you know, there may even be a specific desk area. So all of these things allow that as well. Then you've got home cooking. So as more and more people follow specific diet regimes, they may have specific dietary requirements. It's so simple to then follow that. You've got everything that you need there. You can even, before you've arrived, book your supermarket delivery. Some people go out of their way to actually fill up a fridge for their guests. So that's also an interesting idea. You usually have a freezer as well. So that kind of, especially if you've got a family, that makes all the difference. Or contractors, you know, you might want to, as I say, get a supermarket delivery, and then for the whole week you've got everything in there. We often have lots of stuff left in our freezers. I'm sure you'll be the same. So yeah, and also locations. So locations are really key, and it doesn't always have to be city centre. So a lot of people, when they're first coming into short-term rental, they think, oh, city centre. They also think Babbling Brook, so it might always be a holiday destination, but it doesn't have to be those things. It could actually be near specific things. So it might be, if it's contractors, it might be near a specific development. It might be, as you say, it might be in city centres, but equally leisure guests actually like more quieter places around the edges of towns and cities as well. So it's really interesting to think of those kind of different locations, and you as a short-term rental can really take advantage of that. You can kind of be dotted all over the place rather than kind of one hotel that is quite limited where it could be. Familiarity, I really like this one. So that's all about being able to do what you want and keep your own routine. So we've all been away, haven't you? And I don't know about you, when I'm sort of away, I literally feel slightly unwell. Things aren't quite at the same time. You're eating different food that you're not used to. And it's not always a pleasant thing. And it always makes me laugh when you hear about the pop stars, and they are always said to be divas. But actually, you know, if you're traveling constantly all the time, why wouldn't you want to have, you know, the brands that you normally eat? Why wouldn't you want to have those things that are normally surrounded by you? You know, you've worked really hard to do that. Why not? So I'm a bit pro for the old diva, as long as they're lovely, polite and kind people. And then finally, Housekeeping. So this is an interesting one, isn't it? So in hotels, it tends to be every day, doesn't it? And actually, especially in the being eco, that's a real waste. Like you literally, they always ask whenever I go and stay in a holiday hotel, do you want me to dress, to bring you new towels each day? Clearly not. Like if I'm staying 3 days, I don't need 3 new towels. I'm perfectly capable myself of hanging them up and reusing them. But likewise, in a short-term rental, if you've got some kind of scenario, let's say you've got a family and it's a holiday and you do actually want to have some daily, housekeeping, then of course that can be extra, that can be paid for. And that's really, really fantastic. So we can offer the best of both worlds. So that's really great. So I've got, hi, Trudy. Oh, have I had Oh, yeah. So Trudy's asked a question. Great question. She has asked about luxury holiday rentals with pools, tennis courts, cinema rooms. Do they work? Well, so this is really, Trudy, going back to the basics of understanding if there is demand for that. So I'm quite certain that, a luxury holiday rental in some horrible place in the kind of back end of nowhere, not a nice area, and you like plonk a beautiful luxury place, it's probably not going to be that good, is it? But if it is in an area where it is, let's say, stunning, it may be, a big place that is multi-generational. So that's something where people would want, a swimming pool, tennis courts, cinema rooms, all of those kind of things. You can see that would be amazing. But again, you've got to make sure, like I said earlier, that there's lots of demand and not so much, so many people offering that. So if you've got a massive demand, and for some people that is creating their own thing. So there is, there's people who've created sort of Harry Potter properties, and literally the one I'm thinking of, it was just a terraced house, completely nothing special. But when you walked in, this person had gone out of their way to create this incredible thing, and she's actually created the demand. So there is a demand, but there's nobody else doing that. But that took a lot of hard work and effort to really build that interest, build that trust, and people wanting to come to that specific thing. So that's really specific, really niche. And not everyone's going to want to do that. I certainly haven't gone down that route. But, you can have the much bigger ones. But yes, I have also, Trudy, gone and stayed at, incredibly expensive properties. One of them I'm thinking about on the edge of the lake, lakes in the Lake District. And that was booked out, months and months and even years in advance. And it really was incredibly beautiful. But for me, I didn't like that kind of property for me as a management company, because I just look at it and I nearly pass out with the amount of cleaning and the amount of upkeep that would take. You imagine somebody having a party and how many hours it would take to put back to be ready for the next one. So for me, that doesn't attract me, but for others, that might be your absolute, you love that kind of hospitality, and that might be great. So Trudy, keep listening, and we'll go on into a bit more detail there. So really, for me, there are 3 types of guest type. And I would say pretty much, hey Darren, nice to see you. I would say it pretty much falls into 3 categories, and lots of them will fall, into all the different types of guests usually follow into these 3 guest types. So 1 is contractors, 2 it's leisure guests, and 3 it's corporates. And this is where we're going to deep dive into each one of those, and to understand how important it is to truly understand each of these guest types, but also ensure that you choose one and have a subset one. So basically, while we're going through this, start thinking about who is my number 1 avatar, who is my number 1 guest type. You might have other people from, different. So for instance, for me in my hotel, our number 1 avatar is contractors. But do we have leisure guests as well? Absolutely, of course. Do we have the odd corporate? Yes, we do definitely have the odd corporate guest, but the whole property is set up for contractors. It is very clear. It is very specific. I'm not trying to be something, I'm not trying to be a multi-generational leisure guest like Trudy just mentioned, where I provide all games and indoor cinema and stuff like that. It's not that. It's just a really lovely, basic contractor accommodation. They're really comfortable. Everyone loves it. It looks nice. It feels nice. It's got everything there, but it's not anything else. Now, those leisure guests will see that I'm not offering anything over and above, and will accept. If that's kind of what they want to do, then they'll come there. And likewise with corporates, if I have a corporate, I will maybe add a few things. I may buy some extra, items for the kitchen and stuff like that, depending on what they want. But there we go. Okay, so and within the contractors, I also split that out into 3. So you have kind of small businesses, their kind of trades team. You have the second one is kind of like site projects and their contractor teams. And the third one is large scale teams. And then within leisure, I mean, we've talked about, oh, no problem, Trudy. We've talked about that. So you might have city breaks and holiday destinations, and then you've got your corporates. So what is a contractor? So this can be anyone from somebody who's completely self-employed as an individual, or it might be they're hired by the company. It might be that they're just literally doing a specific task, or it might be a massive project. So it really is. And the world of construction is amazing. It can be anything from, and I found this during COVID. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe how many just the most random of things that contractors do to keep our country going. I had a lot of them staying in my accommodation, and I also helped fill up everyone else's accommodation in the area. And it literally covered everything, so many different maintenance works, real high, highly skilled contractors. So in fact, 2 weeks ago, I had some contractors staying, and their specific role was to go around all the forecourts. And it must have, and in fact, my husband went there the other night, and I said, "Oh, has it changed?" He said, "Oh yeah, it's changed to a new provider." So these people just go around changing the forecourts. That's specifically what they do. So quite interesting, very specific. You'll be looking at things like they'll be dealing with new developments, infrastructure projects, industrial estates, commercial properties, Asda's, supermarkets, all of those kind of things. Locations that require a real substantial workforce to carry out what I would call specific tasks. So generally, just normal housing estates, they are usually something that can just be built by locals. But as soon as you start requiring more specialized needs, so it might be a new water filtration system, or it might be, as I say, that forecourt thing, it might be updating a supermarket. So I had, for a number of weeks, I had these guys that came around. They were just groups, and they just updated the supermarket going all the way around the country. Amazon, they send the same, well, I don't know if it's the same, but they send teams out to build their huge warehouses. So it's really looking at those kind of specialist ones that seem to go. So obviously all of these people are going to need this kind of temporary accommodation. And what you'll find is, and you can just imagine, like we spoke about earlier, when you imagine just how utterly depressing it would be to know that you've got to live in an area for 2 years in a hotel room. I mean, that's enough to drive anyone mad, isn't it? So what is great nowadays is people are, and businesses are considering much more people's, mental well-being, their happiness at work, because it's a bit like schools, isn't it? If kids are happy, they tend to learn more. If you are enjoying a topic, you tend to learn more, don't you? So all of these things are really important. So It may also be that there is a kind of a shortage of contractors for that area. So what I'm thinking is, in our local area, we are building a film studio. So unless our local council gets on and really starts adding in, educational things in the college and stuff like that, there is going to be a shortage of really technically experienced people for that particular site. So you will know that there's going to be a certain period of time where people are going to have to travel from far away and potentially stay, and whether that'll be short-term rental, it probably will be. So it's all about kind of those specialized skill sets, I would say, that really help you sort of to bring them in. And then also, just as a general for contractors, I'm going to deep dive a bit more into each type of contractor, but contractors as well fall into three kind of behaviors, I suppose, for want of describing it in a better way. And I call them gym bunnies, beer bunnies, or gaming bunnies. Okay, so if you are going to be looking at making contractors your main avatar, then please ensure that your gym is very close to a gym. Yeah, because you know those kind of buff, contractors who want to spend their time in the gym, and that's what they do. They'll either get up early or they'll come home. And for instance, when I had 6-in-1, there was a gym downstairs, and we used to have an agreement that they would get a bit of a discount if they went downstairs to the gym. So that was pretty good. Then you've got beer bunnies. So they're the ones that probably aren't so svelte, maybe not so muscly, and they go to what now my teenage kids call spoons. They go to Wetherspoons or to the local pub, and yeah, they would like it to be clearly in walking distance because they want to have a couple of beers after work. That's their relaxation, and then they want to walk home. And then the final one, and I've had a number of these as well, is the gaming contractors, and I kind of liken that to, they want to be spending hours in a darkened room exercising their thumbs inherently. So do ensure that you have a smart TV as well. Some people do provide consoles. I certainly did not. I did speak to some of my contractors about this, and there's so many different types that all of mine, if they were coming long term, they would often bring their own tellies. So they'd bring these enormous TVs, and they bring their own consoles. So I'm a bit kind of like, yeah, I don't offer that much for all of those kind of things. Okay, so just again with contractors, you have a whole host of different ones. I'm just going to kind of read through these. We kind of struck on it a bit, but it can be anything from engineers, maintenance technicians. So that could include, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, all of those kind of things. Healthcare workers, that is really key. This could be traveling, not doctors, traveling nurses, but just be aware, do check your local hospital if they have their own accommodations. So in one of my areas, they had masses of accommodation. So I rarely had any kind of doctors and nurses staying, but I did have people who were coming to visit, friends and family who were in hospitals. You might have event staff. So yeah, we've had quite a lot of event staff coming and staying. They're really interesting, especially if it's, kind of a long or a big, I don't know, festival, sporting event, because there's often, isn't there, a number of days to prepare. Then you've got the event, and then you've got a number of days to wind it all down. So those are really, really key. And some of them even can utilize, because I'm down south, quite near, ports and things like that. And some of them actually travel down, stay with you for a few days before they then head off to Europe or something like that. So yeah, there's just this whole host of people doing sort of crazy different jobs who might need, your accommodation. And so it's really considering all of these. So I know when people start off with looking at service accommodation, short-term rental, most people think holiday lets, don't they? They think holiday accommodation, because so many people, I'm just reading what Darren has said. Yeah, he's saying that my cup of tea is making him thirsty. Mm. Yeah, let's catch up soon, Darren. That's fantastic. Yeah, so with what was I saying? Yeah, so people just tend to think of holiday lets, and I find that that can be opening yourselves up to challenges. I'm not saying that holiday lets don't work. Of course, there's a lot of really, really successful businesses out there doing that. But there's a lot of things that we have to think about, and we'll go on to that later, such as seasonality, which can have a marked effect. And for me, I like to have all year round business. I don't really want to be running my business where I am worried about my winter trade, although there are some who actually shut for the winter. And again, if that's your model and that works for you, then that's absolutely fantastic, isn't it? You can go off to the Bahamas in the winter and then come back and do your summer stint. So it's about understanding and knowing what works for you. But when I talk about contractors to people for the first time, they're always really surprised. What, really? People would go to, and they mention like their local town, and they'd be like, nobody would hire accommodation there. And it's like, you'd be surprised if it's of a decent sized town, so usually over 70,000 people, but I like to head for over 100,000 people population. Then there's enough infrastructure, and especially if there's some massive growth, then you're going to see lots and lots of contractors coming in. So there's really is, in the places where, you know, there is this growth, there's a massive demand for contractors, and they would much prefer, and as we mentioned earlier, it's often much cheaper for them to come and stay with you. It's so much more comfortable, all those things that we mentioned earlier. Why wouldn't they want to come with you? And the big one with that is then you look at getting more consistent income. So rather than always having to book out your weeks and your weekends, if you have somebody, you know, a big project, then you're literally going, wow, this is amazing. And you can start getting properties to answer the demand. So when I very first started out, within the first sort of 3 weeks, I'm traipsing around all these development sites, handing out my leaflets, and this chap said, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to come back to you. He booked for a month, and then his business booked for the next 18 months. And in fact, he had 2 properties at the time, and then he actually brought in another company who are working on the same site. And generally for 18 months, I had 5 apartments purely for these guys. I even had like Christmas parties for them, because they were just absolutely fantastic. So I remember sending them an invoice for 3 months, and I just couldn't believe looking at my bank account when it was paid. Now I would prefer to do monthly. I think it's better to sort of invoice every 28 days, but that's another story. Yeah, having lower turnover of guests. So inherently, if you have people, you know, kind of living there, although it's not their home, it's somewhere where they're coming to spend a lot of time at, you're going to get much less wear and tear on your property. Yeah, it's much lower. It would be lowering your maintenance costs. It's you know, really great. You might only need, well, generally you would then only do 1 weekly clean, all of those kind of things. But also with this lower turnover of guests, you can negotiate, they can negotiate a lower rate. You can offer a lower rate because you can remove, you know, you're only doing, you know, say 1 linen change a week, all of those kind of things. And sometimes if they actually go home at the weekends, you can offer them a rate. Obviously, it's got to be good for you too, where they actually keep it for the whole week, not just Monday to Friday. They can then leave all of their stuff. And that's what I did with mine, these particular ones that I was talking about that stayed for 18 months, because that enabled them to leave their stuff. I was still able to make really great money, but I didn't have to be booking out the weekend. So I was saving a lot of money. So I gave them a cheaper rate to cover the weekends so they could have it all the time. And I still did really well out of that. So it's really great. And of course, that kind of makes it much more simple, doesn't it? You're just billing every month. And that just makes the whole thing, really, really great. Generally with contractors, they have, a project, and it's a specific time scale. So quite often you will have much longer stays, so that's great. And also, even if it is a short stay, so I was talking about the forecourt guys that came and stayed with us the other day. So I spoke to the lady who booked, and she said, yeah, we're just going to be there for a week. I then spoke to the lead guest, and he said, oh my goodness, I can't believe that they think we're going to get it done in a week. He said, we really love your property. We'll definitely be coming back next week. So it's really great to, understand how long each of these assignments are going to be, and how long they're going to be. And if they're going to stay a long time, really treat them really well. What is it? Do they need I don't know. Do they need a walk? Do they need something? What is it that they need? If one of the places I had, the guys worked nights and we had curtains, but he wanted blackouts. So of course I went out and bought him a blackout blind. I mean, it was like, let's say £25, and my ops manager put it up. They were staying for a long time. Why would you not do those kind of things to really ensure that, you answer their needs? Obviously, contractors, it's great. They're really flexible when they want to move in, move out, and you can answer that as well. So that's great. So now going into those different types of contractors. So if you remember, I spoke about 3 specific types. And they kind of fall into number 1 are kind of the last minute contractors who tend to work for themselves, or they're a small team, and they're literally like last minute. They're looking for the lowest price, and they're searching for that lowest price. The second one would be kind of smaller companies and perhaps owner operators. And the third one would be like the really kind of big companies wanting to book for their team. So none of us want to be Monday, 4 p.m. with an empty property or empty properties. Okay. So if we're basing our business around these last minute, low price searching contractors, we're really going to be on the edge, and we're not going to be sleeping that well at the weekends. We don't want that, do we? We want to sleep well. We want to do these kind of things. So basically these guys, but don't forget, sometimes these guys fill a gap. So I'm not discounting them at all, but this is number 1. We basically want to be pushing our business towards the second and the third type of contractors. So what are these sort of last minute, low price contractors? How do they work out? So it tends to be 1 to 4 per group. They literally are last minute. It'll generally be Monday to Wednesday, Monday to Thursday bookings. They don't want to keep booking in case they lose the job. So we've had that before, where they book for a month, and at the end of the first week, they're not wanted anymore. Usually you have a lead guest who books, and they're happy to book via the phone or kind of WhatsApp, that kind of thing. Definitely the cheapest room. And they'll usually book through, say, booking.com, Airbnb, but they would be happy to be converted after the first week to longer term if you can. But again, quite often these guys are more than happy to come back again the next week and just go for the cheapest again, rather than coming necessarily back to you. So just be aware of those type of people. Another thing just to be aware, and I don't mean to brush them with a tar brush, but often these kind of people really looking for the cheaper options don't necessarily care for your properties as well. So they tend to be more of the muddy boot type brigade. They also may not be very respectful of your property, and they may cause damage because they just don't really care. They just come in and they go out. So just be very aware. There's a place for these guys, but we don't want them all the time. That would not be very comfortable. Then you've got your small companies and owner operators. So this is kind of the middle group. So I would say you want kind of less than 10% of that first group. This middle group is going to be your main chunk. You're probably sort of 60-70%. And these guys are the normal ones where perhaps the head office or the company owner does all the booking for it. They really want to be respectful of your property. Their employers would not find it acceptable, obviously, if there was any damages. And I've had that conversation before. I mean, quite often they're lads away from home. They might not mean to be disrespectful. I've got teenage boys. We all know what can happen when you've got some lads together. Sometimes they just might not think. So you sometimes have to just manage them and let them know that they need to be a bit tidier, take their boots off, clean up after themselves, and then usually they're pretty much fine. I've never really had any problems. I did have one chap who had to write me an apology letter because he was rude, and I told the company that I do not have anyone staying in my property who are rude to my staff. So I got an apology letter. So don't let people walk all over you. You know, it's really key. You're providing a great service, and likewise, they should be, understanding and appreciating what they get from you, really. So usually we're looking at ranging from sort of £35 to £50 a night that they might be given or might be budgeted. But do remember, that is the price of say the accommodation, and then generally when they're away from home, they get given what would be called like a food allowance, something like that. So be aware that if they say, oh no, I've only got £35 a night, and that doesn't work for you, don't you start losing money. Just start negotiating, saying, well, you obviously have your daily food allowance as well, which is not going to be expensive, because obviously in a hotel that would be very expensive to buy breakfast and dinner in a hotel, whereas with you they could get a cheaper takeout, they can get a frozen pizza, they can really budget much better and use that to stay with you. So it's really key to do that. So again, what are the kind of main things with them? They might be groups of say 1 to 15. Generally, obviously it can be more, but that tends to go into the bigger group at that much. They will usually book for a week to get to see if they like it, and then they'll be happy to book much longer if they need to. It tends to be Mondays to Thursdays, but they might be open if the longer bookings to go for the weekends as well. The lead guest may book, but generally it might be the head office or something like that. They like to book via sort of email and telephone if they're going to go for direct bookings. They will have a specific budget, but it is very much location oriented as well. So there might be a little bit more flexibility there. They do usually book on booking.com, Airbnb, but again, they're prepared to be, transferred to be a direct booking. But they definitely want to be within sort of 15 to 20 minutes drive of their site, and they would really like to have some safe parking. It doesn't necessarily have to be outside the property, but they want it to feel safe as well. So that would kind of be your bulk of your serviced accommodation contractors. Of course, thirsty work, all this talking. So the third type is what I would call large scale teams. And I remember a few years ago, one of my lovely associates, he said, I've just had a call, 50, they want to house 50 contractors for 18 months. I was just like, what? Really? Is that even possible? And it was. And anyway, he ended up racing around finding as many HMO rent-to-rent landlords as he could, and he took them on and put these people up. And what a fantastic deal would that be. So there are these kind of massive projects, large companies who are looking for these bigger things. And even for instance, last year we had a film crew come and stay. So we had some of the technical guys, they stayed with us for a couple of months. Really, really interesting. So a lot of these companies, though, will require quite specific accommodation. Obviously has to be of a decent standard. They may have sort of established policies and procedures, and that you would need to adhere to those. If there was kind of any problems, you would have to have a resolution process to answer those needs really quickly. It is the next step up on what I would call professionalism. The first two, you can kind of get away with being a little bit slapdash, as we all are at certain stages. I mean, I've done it myself, where you might forget to do something if you're not particularly automated. But once you get to those large scale ones, you're not going to get away with making many mistakes. So you really want to be on the ball for that one. Now, the contractors should treat your properties really well. It is very important. Their business, the company that they work for, they would be really, they're representing that local area, so they don't want to be causing any issues. But again, they may need a little bit of managing. They are humans at the end of the day. But with that, I always, it's always about setting guest expectations. If they need to leave their boots by the door, just make it very clear after that first week's clean. If they're really not doing as they're required, then you just go and have a polite chat. We don't need to be draconian about it. Just let them know what is required within your property. And head office are usually very, very supportive of those things. And, things can break. I had one quite large fellow, and he kind of laid back on the bed and all the wheels went up inside the bed because he was quite a sizable gentleman. And they were no problem at all. They just replaced the bed. So all of these things, usually they're pretty good. So it usually is kind of large teams coming from the sort of headquarters, and that headquarter is responsible for booking for everyone. So they're pretty overwhelmed. They've usually got a lot of things that they're trying to sort of juggle with organizing it. So anything that you can do to make it easier for them is generally gratefully received. So again, just a quick overview of those. You can have anything from 1 to 100 people per contractor group. They are looking for accommodation generally for months, and they will be looking in advance. So they might start talking to you quite a few months in advance. So really, nurture these leads and come to that. So Monday to Thursday, but can include weekends. So again, if they're happy with you for the first week or so, they will go longer. So I did have a scenario where I had a really long-term booking. They came and stayed with us, and they were actually really high-end contractors, and they all had Porsches. That's another story. They all had Porsches, and we didn't have specific parking outside our property, and so they cancelled our long-term booking. So I did absolutely everything to show them how we had safe parking literally just around the corner, but they weren't having it. So sometimes you can't please everyone. They really want to have one point of contact. Generally, it would be email or telephone. Price will be less critical. Obviously, they want to have value for money, but it is really about professionalism and location. Those are generally key. And you're more likely to get bookings via the corporate online travel agents, such as Silverdor, Situ, all of those kind of things. So goodness me, that's how massive the market is for contractors, because I've talked endlessly on about that. But I think for a lot of people, it's totally new. And I've seen Trudy's asked another question, so I will respond to that now. But yeah, contractors are a really huge opportunity. So do not discount them by thinking, oh, I'm only going to do holiday lets, because I think that is, I think it's really worth looking at your local area and seeing what there is, because there is a lot of extremely oversaturated tourist areas. There is also some extremely oversaturated contractor areas, but there's a lot of small up and coming towns of kind of 70 to 100,000 or more, where there's massive growth going on. So therefore massive contractors coming in. And those are the ones that are absolutely fantastic to, you know, to bring in and to take advantage of. So leisure guests. So obviously, I mean, pretty much most of us will have hired an Airbnb, or as they're called, you know, a holiday let, that kind of thing. So we know, so why would we take it? We are in one of the most beautiful countries in the world, and we have everything from coastlines, we have countryside, we have national parks. We've got history, culture, castles, museums, historical landmarks. And then on top of that, we have kind of amazing activities, don't we? Hiking, cycling, water sports, walkers, dog walkers. And we have amazing food and drink. So we have kind of Michelin star restaurants. We've now got these really cool craft breweries, artisan foods. You know, it's just, you know, massive. And we have everything from really luxury kind of requirements right the way through to, you know, budget family. So if you imagine if you were a family wanting to go on holiday, it would be so much cheaper for you to hire just a bog standard 3-bed house holiday let than it would to go to a hotel. And of course, massive savings as well with regards to food. We've all done it. And convenience. Who wants to, you know, go in a hotel and have to go and eat with a baby or young children who are running around, and it's just, yeah, too much. So yeah, there's so many benefits of short-term rental. So again, this kind of goes back for location. So I will come back, Mirren, to your question. Thank you, in a moment. But yeah, so locations, yeah, I mean, definitely it's really important, isn't it? A desirable location. It might be near the beach. It might be a scenic landscape, tourist destination. You obviously want it to be safe, convenient. It may be useful to have access to transport. All of these things to be taken into consideration. But the type and size of property really depends on who you are looking to attract within this massive leisure guest market, because obviously that's really huge. So are you looking at kind of multi-generational properties? And that's where Trudy was talking about, you know, maybe TV rooms, cinema rooms, pools, all of those kind of things. I mean, that I don't really like those kind of things, because all I think of is upkeep, keeping it clean. But for some people, they run the most incredible properties like that, and they make mega money. So, you know, I'm not at all saying that it's not a good strategy. Now, is there a minimum stay, Trudy has asked, by law for leisure guests? No. So like any hotel, we're like hotels, aren't we, I suppose? So no, you can stay for a night. I would not suggest renting by the hour for obvious reasons. But yes, you can do a minimum of 1 night stays. I personally don't. I have a minimum of 2 nights at the weekend and 3 or 4 nights in the week. And that just ensures that I only ever want to have 2 changeovers a week. So yeah, but in fairness, this week I've actually got 3 changeovers. I just randomly had like a 3-night, a 3-night, and a 4-night. And I was happy to take that. But that's very, very unusual. I don't know how I managed to do that. So yeah, and also obviously you can think of unique things. So are you looking at tree houses, yurts? Is it eco-friendly? You know, all the things that again Trudy mentioned. Are you looking at hot tubs, terraces, gardens, recreational facilities? Clearly everyone, no matter who your guest is, needs Wi-Fi, parking, you know, conveniences, quality. So again, you've really got to be thinking, if it's really high end, it's got to be reflected in everything that's within it. You know, high end, if you're paying a lot of money, you expect high quality furnishing, all of those things. But if it's more budget friendly, then, you know, that's fine. People want to have comfy beds still, but it doesn't have to be, you know, really high end finish to your sofas and things like that. So I think one of the key things is really reviews and ratings for those leisure guests. People want to see, don't they, other people, how much they've enjoyed their stay. All of those kind of things is just absolutely key. But again, it's all about doing your due diligence on the area, seeing what's available. And I'm not saying that a property in the middle of nowhere. So, for instance, I had a property up the road from me that I really wanted to do on a rent-to-rent basis. It was literally in the middle of nowhere. And I just thought, my gosh, that would just be so perfect for a party pad. You know, hen weekends, you know, stag weekends, because there's not that many people who want those kind of guests, because they can come with a few issues. But yeah, so it's, you know, again, it's really understanding what the demand is and how you can fulfill that. So that's an interesting one. Next, and I will just answer Miran's question. So Miran said, how important is free parking for contractors and corporate guests, considering that there is a secure paid car park, a short walk away, local transport links, etc.? Okay, so again, just think about your scenario. I've been and stayed at Whitstable. So that is a tourist place. I went for a family holiday. I think we stay, I can't remember, let's say a 4-day weekend. It was on the main high street, which is only a 2-minute walk away from the beach. I knew specifically that there was 0 parking. And I also knew from the advert that I would have to pay a fair amount each day. I can't remember, let's say £10 a day for parking. But I was able to do that on a phone app, you know, so quite easy. I wouldn't have to keep going back to the car necessarily. So I knew in advance that was the scenario, and I was happy to accept that because I really liked the location and I really liked the property. For contractors, again, as long as you're really clear where the parking is, if it's secure, if it's not, then again, they will make their judgments. Do they prefer off-street parking? Absolutely. Is it essential? No. We don't have any parking with the hotel, but there is a lot of parking and secured parking around it. So it's giving that kind of information. And definitely if you've got fantastic transport links, but it's unlikely that contractors are going to come necessarily by train. They tend to come in vans or cars. So yeah. So finally, corporate guests. And it would be great to go and look at Richard Majewski's interview that I did with him. He talks a lot about corporate guests, and I'm also touching. He has written something for my book as well. So yeah, so corporate guests. This is very much kind of business related, and the demand for corporate guests might be near head offices, industrial estates, conference centres. Yeah, as I said, headquarters. They are likely to want to have really strong transport links. So that would be kind of airports, train stations, major road networks, because business travelers are going to want that. And yeah, so you may be thinking kind of finance, technology, healthcare, that draws sort of business travelers, and it may be sort of industry specific. So yeah, I would say this is totally different if you're doing corporate correctly. Is that yeah, you're like, so rather than leaflets, need to be thinking kind of luxury brochures that you're going to be taking to head offices, having very official business meetings, building rapport, understanding what their needs are and seeing how you can answer them. And again, another great interview I did with Chris Morn, all about trust strategy. And again, that's something I want to touch on very quickly, but I'm running out of time. So again, with your corporates, it is, you know, location will be absolutely vital. So really find out, and another corporate ones that you can look at is film studios. So I knew a chap in Wales Cardiff in Wales. He had loads of one-bed properties, and they were literally rented out to all the people that worked at the film studios. So that's, yeah, again, really interesting. And obviously it needs to, again, be potentially private meeting rooms. All, you know, they may have specific amenities that they require. So, you know, it's really key to have great quality, obviously comfortable beds, no zip and link beds or anything like that. It's all about, you know, their kind of comfort, generally 24-hour security they really prefer. Again, online reviews and ratings are really important. And a duration, it may be, you know, a few weeks, a few months. I really like the corporate guests that have come from abroad. So maybe, you know, it's a new manager, a new person who's coming in. I've had a number of those, and those are really great because they get 2-3 months to find their own accommodation. So yeah, but again, really offer extra service to these because they usually pay really well. If they like you, they'll keep coming back and keep coming back. So it's incredibly important to keep pushing that. So really, to sort of tie that all in, how do you choose which avatar? And so that is inherently checking your local area. Do you know what I mean? What is in your local area? What is the town? What is it? You know, is there huge development? Is there massive infrastructure going on? Is there a nearby wind turbine field being built? Or is it much more leisure? Is it kind of like, you know, like a Oxford? I mean, Oxford covers many, all three of these actually, but, you know, is it kind of like a city break? Is it more kind of, you know, very much a holiday maker place where you want to go? Or is it a corporate? Is it near, you know, these massive head offices, you know, thinking like Jaguar Land Rover, that type of thing? Or is there any massive companies that are relocating? So I think loads of companies, didn't they, at one stage relocated to Birmingham, those kind of things. So concentrating on that individual avatar guest will really help you then shape how you know, choose your property, how you then furnish it. It literally then reflects on everything. You don't want to be everything to everyone. As we know, it is so much better to have a niche, and it is really important to target that. So it's really understanding the needs of the guests. You can become more operationally efficient. You start to get a reputation for, you know, contractor or leisure or corporate, whichever one it is. And that in turn will give a much better guest experience. And then on top of that, just to close, is I mentioned earlier, Chris Morn talks about this trust strategy. And if you haven't looked at iPrac or you're not a member, I would highly recommend going and having a look. So iPrac, capital PRAC. It is really fantastic. And Chris is literally changing the industry in as far as not just having a marketing strategy and a sales strategy, but having your trust strategy, and especially with those bigger head offices. So if you're looking at corporates and you're looking at the bigger contractors, if they can see that you've won awards, if they can see that you're iPrac accredited, if you've done this and that and the other, then that's going to be really key. And again, even with your leisure guests, if they can see that you've had multiple you know, really high level reviews, there's a lot of really, you know, great kind of follow up, especially and I've been talking about that a lot recently. When they open your website, they need to see you. So when you open my website, there's pictures of people in my accommodation. So it's a bit like, isn't it? It is when you know, they're advertising a restaurant and it's an empty restaurant. I mean, who wants to go to that? You know, it's all about seeing people. So you want to have and there's also a video of me talking. You know, if you don't want to talk, you don't have to, of course, but you want to go and have pictures of you because people want to buy off people. It really is absolutely essential to build that trust and to really understand it. And then, as I mentioned, all of each different area. So you want to have your trust strategy. You then want to have your marketing strategy for each type. And clearly, marketing to a specific type of leisure guest is going to be very different to marketing to a specific contractor type or a corporate. So really understand where to go, how to do that, and I'm really looking forward to sharing more of this in my book when I release it. And Trudy's asked a couple more questions, so sorry, let me just cover those off. Trudy has said, what are your thoughts on the government regulations for planning permission for holiday lets? I'm really excited about it, Trudy. I don't see it as a problem at all. I think it's a bit like HMOs a number of years ago when they brought in licensing and planning. You just, I mean, I would get going now if you're new, because you will get grandfather rights. I think it's, I can't imagine that they would ever not have grandfather rights. And, it's just keeping a track of it. But we are really fortunate. If you're educated, you will be running a really high quality, already licensable property or business. So I've always used, fire retardant furniture, all of those kind of things. So you should be absolutely fine. And in fact, if you go and have a look, just a few weeks ago, I did do a video exactly on this, talking about, what to listen out for and why we should be more excited about this than worried. So yeah, I'm not too concerned about that at all. And then you had one more question, but now it's not. Oh, here it is. Can you get service accommodation properties ready furnished, or best to furnish them your own? I mean, you can buy, I think you can buy, turnkey properties. In fact, I sold my business. And it was, a number of SA units that already were decorated, already had the furniture in, already running. So yeah, absolutely, you can do that. But you just want to ensure that I would advise you potentially not to change the avatar if it was already successfully directed at a particular type of guest. But just be aware that you might, change things up a bit. Be ensuring that what the furniture that's in there is answering it. So if you're moving more from contractors as your main avatar to more leisure, then you might want to change the photos. You might want to add in a few games. You might want to give, more information about local activities, that kind of thing. And in your guidebook, hopefully you don't have a physical guidebook, you'd have an online guidebook. But again, if it is, very much contractor in the winter and leisure guest in the summer, then, I love people who change all their photos. So in the summer, you might have very much more leisure oriented photos, and in the winter, very much more factual contractor photos with potentially, 2 single beds, showing that you can fit in a lot of people to save business, but still have that comfort. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers your questions there. So yeah, thank you so much. That was really interesting. I just wanted to cover that off. I came up the other day and thought, yeah, I think this would be really, really interesting to cover off how important it is to understand your target market and who they are. As I say, I will be launching a book very shortly. So I'm going to start talking about it a bit more, because I've been told I've got to. And yeah, it is service accommodation, how to finally nail your goldmine area. And most of you who know me know that I bang on about goldmine area a lot, because I like people to have an easy life when it comes to running their property business. So brilliant. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Do share, and do please, if you're haven't already subscribed on my YouTube channel, I'd really appreciate it. I'm really building that, and it's really exciting. It's starting to build much more quickly now. So yeah, if you get a chance to subscribe, I would very much appreciate it. And do share with anyone who you think this might be useful to as well. Okay, guys, well, thank you so much. And again, this is Emma Howitt, Pure Abodes. Thank you so much for your time.